Have you ever wondered what happened to the characters of Avatar World? Today, I'm going to tell you the story behind each hero of the game, the ones you've seen so many times, both in the game and beyond. This is Tony, a music producer. Since childhood, he has always been very noisy. In kindergarten, while other kids were quietly playing on the carpet, Tony was running around the room clapping his hands, pretending it was a concert. He loved creating a cheerful rhythm with a rattle, performing in front of the toys as if giving a real show. The teachers sighed, but everyone got used to it. If there was noise somewhere, it meant Tony was making music. When Tony grew up and went to school, he was always bored in class. During breaks, he gathered his friends and told them how you could make a track out of ordinary sounds. Then he'd take out his laptop and show them how he made a song from the teacher's recorded speech. All his classmates liked Tony for his creative nature and funny tracks. Later, he started spending more and more time in the music room. He would spend entire breaks there, trying every instrument, the trumpet, guitar, and violin. But none of them felt right. Each time he learned a new melody, he got upset. Yet he couldn't stay indifferent to the music discs in the classroom. He saw them as a sign of honor and dreamed of becoming a music producer one day, and he did it! Now, he sits in his studio, connects microphones, records artists, and helps them catch the right vibe. Sometimes he even adds rhythm himself, snapping his fingers or tapping his foot, because for him, any little thing can become the start of a new hit. This is Archie, the most mysterious person in town. Nobody really knows what he does, but everyone knows one thing. Wherever he shows up, he always starts dancing. When Archie was a baby, his parents left him at the hospital. A nurse decided it was because he had red hair and freckles all over. But despite that, Archie always smiled, as if he already knew that something extraordinary awaited him in life. When he went to school, he was the only red-haired boy in the class. Everyone was surprised by his appearance, and some even laughed. But Archie didn't care. He just ignored everyone and threw pencils at the ceiling. During a music lesson, he heard rhythm for the first time and realized that his body just wanted to move. Since then, he couldn't stay still to any melody. Even the school bell made him dance. When he grew up, he tried working at a store, but he got fired for dancing with a stick and scaring old ladies. He didn't get upset. He just decided that they were unlucky not to recognize real art. That's when Archie understood that a normal path wasn't for him. He moved to Stardust City, dressed up, and started dancing near fancy fashion boutiques. Passers-by didn't always understand his dances, but nobody judged him. Some filmed him, some smiled, and some clapped. Now, if you hear the gentle tapping of a stick on the pavement in the morning, it means Archie is already dancing somewhere nearby. This is Elliot, a living street statue. When she was a little girl, she kept climbing out of her crib and standing in strange poses. Sometimes she would just freeze in the middle of the room for 5 minutes until the babysitter started to panic. In kindergarten, she loved attention. While everyone else was simply playing, Elliot would purposely chew on toys. The teachers got scared she might choke, but she just enjoyed everyone constantly watching her. When she went to school, she had a phone and took selfies all the time, in class, during breaks, and in the cafeteria. One day, she wandered into the janitor's closet and found an old golden cane. From then on, the cane became part of her image. She would bring it to recess and pretend to be old people, teachers, or sometimes just freeze by the wall as the principal walked by. Everyone laughed, but she didn't move a single millimeter. When Elliot grew up, she realized that with this cane and her talent for freezing, she could make a living. Now she stands covered in gold in the city center, taking coins, smiling, nodding to people, and freezing again. Sometimes children try to tickle her, adults take pictures, and she stays perfectly still. This is Gerald, the local farmer. When he was born, his parents were surprised that he didn't have a mustache, since both of them, for some reason, did. As a baby, Gerald always tried to touch his father's mustache, but his father never understood what he wanted. Sometimes he would just sit and stare at them, as if they were the most important thing in the world. In kindergarten, Gerald would take toys away from those who treated them badly, and he didn't care if they started crying. If someone threw a toy on the floor, Gerald would quietly pick it up and bring it to the teacher. No one ever suspected him, because everyone thought he was the calmest of all. When Gerald went to school, he slept through every class. At first, the teachers were worried, but later they got used to it. As long as he doesn't bother anyone. The only subject that interested him was gym. He would bend down to the ground and watch the ants passing by, sometimes even blowing on them to make them walk faster. When he grew up, he didn't like working with people. He tried getting a job at a store, but it was too noisy. Then he tried an ice cream shop, but there, sleeping wasn't allowed. In the end, Gerald went to work on a farm, not because it was his dream, but because it was the quietest place, and there he could keep watching the ants. And so 40 years passed, quietly, peacefully, with a bucket of water in his hand and his eyes on the ground. Gerald still grows garlic and potatoes, sometimes talking to the ants as if they were his real neighbors. This is Mr. Richard, the local rich man. Since childhood, he has always loved unusual things. Even in diapers, he would attend basketball games, and at that same age, somehow end up inside a box in a supermarket. At home, he played with the robot vacuum. He loved it, until the cat pooped on it. At school, Richard's hair turned gray, which amazed all his classmates. Everyone thought he was the smartest. In music class, he didn't play any instruments but conducted everyone instead. In art class, he only drew dollar signs. And in math class, he practically taught the lessons himself while the teacher listened carefully. When Richard grew up, he didn't like that the entire city of Avatar World only had fast food places. So, after working a year at the fire station, he saved up money and opened his own luxury restaurant. At first, no one came. People were afraid to sit on the chairs painted with gold paint. So Richard became his own first guest. Every day, he would come, order the most expensive dishes, and loudly praise the chef, even if the chef wasn't there. Sometimes he even clapped for himself just to create an atmosphere. Over time, people started coming to watch him eat. Richard takes a long time choosing a dish, smells his fork, adjusts his napkin, and slowly stirs his water 40 times before taking a sip. Sometimes he pretends to taste the soup and nods as if discovering a new flavor, though it's just boiling water. Now he personally checks the waiters' outfits, asks guests if they're satisfied, and sits in the best corner of the hall with a view of everyone. Richard is the most respected man in town. Everyone knows. He has taste, even for taste itself. This is Ricardo, a security guard at the police station. Even as a little child, he never cried. He was always sleeping everywhere and all the time. His parents were happy about it because all the other kids were constantly shouting and not letting anyone sleep. As a child, Ricardo always found quiet places to nap, even during basketball games. At home, he was always asleep too, and nothing could wake him up, even though his cat tried all the time. And in his dreams, he saw himself in a park full of benches, sleeping on every single one. So even in his dreams, he was sleeping? At school, Ricardo was always the one keeping order, but he did it without leaving his seat. If someone started running around the classroom, he just raised his hand and called the teacher. The teachers knew, if Ricardo was calm, everything was under control. When he grew up, Ricardo realized his calling was to keep people safe. At first, he wanted to become a police officer, but during training, he fell asleep standing up. That's when he understood he needed a calmer job. So, he became a security guard at the station. Now, every day, he sits at the entrance, making sure no one makes noise, and sometimes he even takes a little nap, because, in his opinion, peace and order are best kept in sleep. And if someone asks why he's sleeping, Ricardo says, "I'm not asleep. I'm observing with my eyes closed." This is the beloved school janitor. No one knows his name. It seems not even he does. The janitor was born with green hair, and since infancy, never stopped crying. He screamed so loudly that even when they put him to bed, he still woke up the whole house. His parents often couldn't take it and just sat beside him, crying along with him. They always dreamed he would grow up and become a janitor, like his grandpa, his great-grandpa, and his great-great-grandpa. But the janitor didn't want that kind of fate. At school, he was an excellent student, always raising his hand, even when no one asked anything. Teachers praised him, but classmates got annoyed. He even raised his hand during recess. When he finished school, he dreamed of finding a cool job, but he couldn't. He had to work as a pizza delivery boy. One day, he brought an order to the school principal, and the principal offered him a janitor's job with a higher salary. That's how the janitor became a janitor. Burying his principles, he picked up a mop for the first time. This is the local barber. His name is Bobby. The barber was born with bright red hair, even though neither of his parents were redheads. Since childhood, he loved standing in front of the mirror, spinning a comb in his hands, pretending he was already a real master. He could comb himself 100 times a day, happy if his hair looked even a little straighter. At school, he was very passionate. In shop class, he always reached for the scissors, thinking of ways to cut more neatly and quickly. He often tried to help his classmates, trimming bangs, fixing strands, but usually just made things worse, and they would chase him down the hall. Sometimes he came to school early and started checking hairstyles on everyone who entered the classroom. When he became an adult, the barber once met a random man on the street and offered to give him a haircut while he had some free time. That man turned out to be a wealthy businessman, though he looked like a homeless person. With his money, the barber opened his own salon, and since then, he's been the top hairstylist in Avatar World. This is the local cook. Her name is Lily. Lily was unusual from a very young age. She was always picking things up and trying to organize everyone around her. At school, she loved experimenting with objects. She could line up all the pencils and create a speed contest. At first, her classmates laughed, but then they got used to it. There was always a feeling that Lily was up to something. One day, she held a small contest in the classroom. Whoever could gather all the chairs after class the fastest would get a secret prize. As a result, all the children ran around the room trying to grab chairs from each other, and Lily laughed. When she grew a little older, Lily started helping in the school cafeteria. Not with cooking, but with arranging trays, organizing the line, and so on. One day, an adult came into the cafeteria, noticed how Lily managed the chaos, and kept everything under control. He offered her a position in a real kitchen where she could use her talent, and she agreed. Since then, Lily has become a cook and one of the most organized and beloved staff members in the Avatar World kitchen. This is the school principal. His name is Mr. Gray. He has gray hair, wears glasses, and always looks like he knows all the school's secrets at once. Even as a baby, Mr. Gray was different from everyone else. While other toddlers crawled around and threw toys, he quietly sat in his crib, carefully watching who crawled where and who took what from whom. Sometimes his parents noticed that he seemed to be keeping score, who behaved well today and who deserved a warning. At school, he always loved order, but he did it in his own way. He would write down who was late, keep lists of the noisiest students, and announce the discipline results every day. As he grew older, even the teachers started listening to him. He knew who skipped class, who was hiding in the bathroom, and who was only pretending to study. His memory and attentiveness became legendary, and everyone understood this guy was definitely going places. As an adult, Mr. Gray became the school principal, and it was a perfect fit. He still keeps order, knows everyone by name, and somehow always appears where he's least expected. Now, every school day under his leadership runs like a well-tuned clock, sometimes with surprises, but always with purpose. This is the ice cream seller. His name is Jay. When he was little, he loved everything cold. He could stand by an open fridge for hours until his parents chased him away yelling. One day, he even said that when he grew up, he would build a room entirely out of refrigerators. And he kept his promise. Now, he has a whole 100 of them. At school, he loved cold milk, and if he saw that the food was hot, he immediately complained to the cook, saying it was unacceptable and that everything needed to be cooled to perfection. He refused to eat if the food was warm and sat with an empty tray while everyone else had lunch. The cook tried to convince him to try the soup, but he just shook his head, saying he dreamed of a truly cold menu. When he grew up, he didn't know where to work for a long time, because everywhere was too warm. Until one day he befriended a butcher. The shop was cool and cozy. They worked together for a long time, but later argued over who was the boss of cold. After leaving, Jay wandered the city for a long time and stumbled upon an ice cream shop. He went inside, looked around, and realized this was his place. Since then, he has worked there, making ice cream for everyone who, like him, loves the cold and a little bit of madness. This is the local guitarist, Larry. From a very young age, he was hairy and a little unusual. Even when he wore diapers, he already showed his curiosity. He could sit on the floor staring at the poop he had just taken out of his diaper. Of course, his parents were not thrilled with such curiosity. When Larry grew up, he went to school, and his curiosity showed in the way he rummaged through everyone's backpacks. Sometimes he quietly checked who had left which notebooks on the desks and who had neatly placed pencils in their cases. Because of this, he often had to talk to the principal in his office. At school, Larry was forbidden from continuing his unusual interests, so he just wandered the hallways. One day, he entered the music classroom and saw a guitar. He immediately fell in love with it because of the mysteriously captivating hole in the guitar. He took it home and played simple melodies for his cat, dreaming of something big. But his cat preferred to play with the robot vacuum, rather than listen to the guitar, which made Larry cry a lot. As Larry grew older, he started testing his skills on others. He played guitar for Jay from the ice cream shop, for his former friend the butcher, and even for the school janitor. However, they all told him he played badly, so he never saw a big concert. But Larry didn't get upset. He knew they didn't understand music, so he just played in the subway for passersby. Many in the subway didn't like his music either, but some enthusiasts threw him money and enjoyed his sweet tunes. Larry often tried to change his image to appeal more to the audience. He tried all kinds of hairstyles and dyed his hair different colors and frequently dressed in new outfits, sometimes very unsuccessfully. That's our guitarist, and we truly love him just the way he is now. This is Mila, the local mail carrier. From a very young age, she was incredibly energetic and restless. Even in diapers, she constantly ran around the house, carrying everything she could: boxes, toys, slippers. Her parents tried to calm her down, but Mila was only happy when she could carry something from one room to another, even if it was completely unnecessary. When Mila went to school, she quickly realized that sitting at a desk was boring. During breaks, she loved dancing in the hallways, spinning, jumping on benches, and creating little shows for her classmates. Sometimes she would grab the school trumpet and try to play melodies while everyone around laughed, and some even sang along. As she grew older, Mila wasn't a mail carrier yet, but she was already looking for her path into adult life. She tried small jobs, delivering groceries to neighbors, helping in the shop, carrying letters to friends and relatives. Sometimes she would go into stores just to check who needed what, organize boxes on the shelves, help arrange small items, and observe people, learning accuracy and attentiveness. These simple tasks gradually taught her responsibility and precision. In the end, she became the best mail carrier in town. This is Stacy. Now she's a true businesswoman, but since childhood, she was anything but serious. In kindergarten, she loved jumping on the trampoline, and when teachers picked her up to calm her down and put her to bed, she started crying loudly. After all, they wouldn't let her have fun. As she grew older, Stacy realized that chaos was fun, but she wanted something more important. First, she tried teaching lessons instead of teachers at school, then helped her mom at the supermarket, and later became a manager at a store, telling delivery workers how to do their jobs. Over time, her ideas grew bigger, and she opened an office where she makes all the decisions, from projects to the order of coffee breaks. Now, Stacy holds meetings, assigns tasks, and acts like every day is a big event. Her co-workers nod, because they know, without her, the office would turn into chaos. And Stacy is also a true motivator. She loves organizing mini celebrations for any reason, a new mug day, a successful meeting, or just a good Monday. She's sure that even the most serious work becomes easier if you add a little fun to it. This is Carlos, a bank guard. When he was born, everyone was surprised by his black hair, since both of his parents were blonde. His parents often argued because they weren't sure if he was really their child, and Carlos always cried because of it. As Carlos grew older, his hair turned white, and his parents finally calmed down. But Carlos wasn't an ordinary boy. When he got older, he argued for a long time with his parents, asking them to dye his hair black again. In the end, they agreed, returning him to his original look. At school, Carlos didn't like noise. During breaks, he made sure everyone behaved properly and always reported to the principal if someone acted out. The teachers just smiled. If only everyone were this calm and responsible. When he grew up, Carlos didn't want any job other than keeping order like he did at school. But the principal said they didn't need guards, so Carlos got a job at a bank. He really liked it there. He admired the big metal safe that reminded him of rules and order, and the keys to all the bank's doors felt like a symbol of his authority. For the bank, Carlos became part of the family. Everyone was glad to have him. This is Patricia, the most fair judge in the city. Since childhood, she loved to argue. When her mom said it was bedtime, Patricia demanded proof. Otherwise, she refused to go to bed. And if her dad said ice cream wasn't allowed for dinner, she would start recording everything on her phone. At school, Patricia was always proving she was right. She argued with the teacher about anything, gave herself grades, and once even tried to cancel homework because the assignment had violations. Her classmates often came to her when they couldn't decide who was first in line for lunch. She held little court sessions right in the hallway. When Patricia grew up, she realized that arguing could be a real job. First, she worked in an office, settling disputes about who owned the kettle and the mug. Then in a pizzeria, deciding who would get pepperoni and who for cheese. Later, at a fire station, she figured out who could use the axe and who couldn't. And now Patricia is a real judge. Every day, she listens to cases, nods attentively, adjusts her wig, and makes decisions. And if someone dares to object, Patricia simply looks over her glasses, and everyone immediately agrees. This is Michael, a firefighter. When he was born, everyone was surprised. The baby had gray hair. His parents joked that he was born wise and must have already seen everything in life. From infancy, Michael looked like someone who knew exactly how to save everyone. As he grew up, he was a little afraid of fire. He always cried if there was even one candle burning in the room and waited until it was blown out. Even in the kitchen, if his mom was frying eggs, Michael stood nearby with a glass of water, just in case. At school, he was the most responsible student. During breaks, he checked if the toilets worked, if the cafeteria food was good, and so on. One day, during a fire drill, while everyone just stood and panicked, Michael had already brought a bucket of water he borrowed from the janitor. After that, everyone called him Little Firefighter. When Michael grew up, he realized he wanted to be someone who saves others. He joined the fire station, where at first he simply helped, checking helmets, arranging buckets and hoses. Later, he became a real firefighter, and when he got older, he was promoted to head of the fire station. That's Michael for you. This is Sophia, an art teacher. As a child, she had no idea what she wanted to do. Every class at school seemed more boring than the last, and she often fell asleep. But not in art class. There, she was endlessly fascinated. She always ended up covered in paint, even when they weren't painting. During breaks, she loved to paint on her sleeping classmates with brushes, and because of that, she often had talks with the principal. But Sophia never cared about the principal's speeches. When she grew up, she tried to get a serious job, in an office, where everyone sat quietly in gray clothes. But on her very first day, Sophia spilled her coffee, saw a face in the stain, and drew over it with a marker. After that, she decided no more hiding her paints. Everyone had known all along who she was meant to be. Now, Sophia is an art teacher. She walks around in paint stains, wearing a beret and holding a brush in her hand. In her class, no one is afraid to make mistakes, because Sophia always says, "If you got messy, it means you've started creating." This is a Katarina, the local ballroom dance teacher. Even as a baby, she was always trying to stand up and start dancing as soon as she heard any melody. The caregivers were always afraid she'd fall and hurt herself, but Katarina quickly learned to stand on her feet. Soon she wasn't just dancing to music, she was energetically jumping on the trampoline. When Katya started school, things only got more fun. In class, she was always spinning around, raising her hand even if she didn't know the answer, just to be noticed. In the cafeteria, she loved grabbing a full tray of food and running and jumping with it, showing how well she could balance. The teachers sighed, the classmates laughed, and Katya only enjoyed the attention more. As she grew older, Katarina started dreaming of fame, walking down the red carpet, taking photos, and stepping onto a huge stage to the applause of fans. She imagined visiting the most fashionable boutiques and buying lots of beautiful dresses. But when she grew up, she only found a job as a hot dog delivery girl. She didn't like it at all, and she constantly argued with the cashier at the hot dog stand. But one day, while delivering hot dogs to a yoga studio, she saw a class and realized she could open her own dance school. Since then, Katarina has been the head of ballroom dancing in Avatar World. And even though she didn't become a world star, her students definitely have every chance to. This is Melina. She's a cashier. Since childhood, she's been a little strange. She could watch her mom sleep for hours, then suddenly wake her up. One day, Melina decided that money was just shiny circles and tried to make soup out of them. It didn't taste good, but since then she's loved everything that jingles, spins, and clicks. At school, Melina always found adventures. She loved standing at the board and giving lectures on math, even if the lesson was literature. Sometimes, instead of answering a question, she would just say loudly, "Beep!" and sit down, as if everything had been said. The teachers didn't mind. They thought, at least she's not fighting. And indeed, Melina never caused trouble. On the contrary, she was friends with everyone. When she grew up, she decided to find her dream job. First, she tried to be a waitress, but kept taking food away from customers because it didn't pass the check test. Then she worked at a warehouse, but got bored. It was too quiet, nothing clicked. One day, walking past a store, Melina heard that cherished sound, beep. She froze, looked around, and realized this was definitely her future workplace. Since then, Melina has been a cashier. She happily scans items, lines up imaginary customers when no one's around, and sometimes argues with another cashier about who counts more accurately. And every evening when she leaves, she says goodbye to her cash register. See you tomorrow, my dear. Thank you for watching. Write your comments under this video if you want to get into the next video, and also watch my previous video. I'm sure you'll definitely like it.